Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's topic is short season, North Pole, and millennial kingdom theories. This video is going to be so all-encompassing that I honestly was going to originally title this video Question the Narrative. I don't know what to call this video because I'm going to be talking about so many things, but they are all related. Included in today's video, I'm going to be sharing a really fascinating email that I got from a viewer and also a comment that really seems to fit my point of view exactly when it comes to eschatology. So let's get started first with this email. And this email is from Spencer. And let's just get started reading this. I commented this on your YouTube channel, but thought I'd send an email as well. I'm not firm on my beliefs regarding where we are quite yet, but I have developed a revised preterism view. It's preterist, amillennial, and premillennial all at once. I have an audiobook on my channel if you're interested. I believe this is his channel. It's called Project Icarus if you wanted to go over and check it out. And I will also leave a link in the description box for it. If you are the author of this email and I somehow got on the wrong channel, let me know. But I'm fairly certain this is the correct one. I had a bit of a hard time finding it. In summary of the edenic millennium, this view is going to use the Garden of Eden as a blueprint for the millennial kingdom, including its geography. Eden itself was not the entirety of the earth, merely a part of it, where heaven and earth met, where God dwelt with man. I believe this area was reestablished at Jesus' resurrection. I believe that the people of Christ and the ones Jesus talked to went through the Great Tribulation. I believe the Babylon of that day was then destroyed in extreme judgment as per the seals, trumpets, bowls of Revelation. These things are justice against the wicked people who persecuted Christians. But Jesus was still reigning on earth. He's in Eden, the New Jerusalem. Enoch's prophecy of sheep tells following the judgment of those who persecute that the old house, what I believe to be modern Jerusalem, is moved out and a new house is built, New Jerusalem. Then most of the remaining wicked people attack this New Jerusalem and all die. Armageddon. This fiery judgment establishes peace on earth for 1,000 years. The wicked that survive, as per Zechariah 14, must go to Eden on the Feast of Booths to be rectified. But still, Eden reigns over the whole earth, but it is separate. This explains the verses in Revelation 22 where Jesus tells believers to come, and that outside are the dogs and sorcerers, liars, sexually immoral, and sinners. That's us. Eden, during its reign, still has a massive influence over the earth. Christians on the outside are emissaries and diplomats. They're there to still lead people outside to Christ. Then Satan is loosed after 1,000 years. He begins his conquest of the outer world, Gog and Magog. He enacts revolutions across the world that overthrow and kill these emissaries, who perhaps fell to wicked or selfish ways. Jesus recalls most of his believers to Eden, emptying out the city. The idea of Jesus' kingdom physically on earth has to be removed from public knowledge for the deception to thrive. And so the Satan uses those who are of the generations descending from the survivors of Armageddon to take control. The Windsors, the American presidents, those with royal blood who are the descendants of Nimrod. World wars and public education prime the public for deception. Those who don't go along with the narrative are killed, orphans, or put in asylums. And that leads us to now. The events seem to indicate chaos rampant on the earth. The serpent of chaos enacting his final defiance against the great creator, slowly bringing the nations together with the final religion, new Gnosticism. The end will come not when the world denies God exists, but once they fully reject him and his sovereignty, knowing he exists. I believe atheism is a stalling tactic to prevent this outright rejection until the day of the storm. The storm is the event of Ezekiel 38. It even calls it that. This is the event that the wicked ones look forward to. This new religion is pervasive and persuasive. I have fallen into it many times. Many of the popular alt history and flat earth YouTubers are among its followers, though they won't say as much. This religion will rally humanity with the gods of old, likely revealed as aliens or Anunnaki, to bring humanity one last time against God. They have mismanaged, and I won't say that, ard the earth and see Eden and won it for themselves. Revelation 20. What about the resurrection? It's ongoing. Every Christian who dies is brought to this Edenic paradise. Jesus tells the thief on the cross as much. This is a continual and ongoing resurrection of believers, spanning the course of since Jesus took the keys of death and Hades. Unbelievers are still brought to Sheol upon death. This is the world that exists at the north. Now, whether it be the North Pole, as I'm inclined to believe, or at the north quarter of Antarctica, as the earth was sometimes divided into quarters, is unknown. I think the northern lights and the land with no sun imagery lends itself better to the north. This is so far the best explanation I've come up with, but not yet. Yet still ongoing. Was, is, yet to come. Thanks, Shelley, for all that you do. Be aware of new Gnosticism. It's everywhere these days. From modern media slowly revealing gnosis to its ignorant consumers to active perpetrators of occult principles. Michael Heiser actually has 2 great lectures on Gnosticism. They're long, but if you're struggling with such thoughts, they do a fantastic job of dismantling that system from a biblical standpoint. Thanks and God bless. And again, this is from Spencer. And thank you, Spencer. This was a really, really well thought out theory, and it's really something that gave me pause, hence why I'm making a video about it. And also thank you for the tip about Michael Heiser having those lectures on Gnosticism, because yes, I see a lot of it in my comments, and it certainly is growing. That can't be denied. So, regarding the correlation that was made between the Garden of Eden and paradise, it made me think of Timothy Alberino's book, Birthright, in which he addresses the fact that the Garden of Eden, paradise, and even heaven are all talking about the same places. So from Birthright, it says, heaven and paradise are employed synonymously throughout the scriptures. Jesus, for example, tells the thief on the cross that he would be with him in paradise. Since we know that after rising from the dead, Jesus ascended to his Father in heaven, we may infer that paradise is heaven. Indeed, Paul leaves no room for doubt when he refers to the third heaven, the location of Yahweh's throne, as paradise. Several other passages in the Bible, as well as extra-biblical texts, confirm the equivalence. Whereas the synonymity of heaven and paradise is widely acknowledged by scholars, the same parallels pertaining to heaven and Eden are less frequently noted, though nonetheless apparent. Jesus, while admonishing the church of Ephesus in John's Revelation, makes the curious proclamation, to the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. According to Genesis, the tree of life was in the midst of Eden. It follows then that the paradise of God is Eden. Given the seeming interchangeability of the terms, we may formulate the following equation. Eden is paradise is heaven. Though difficult to parse in the Western mind, this equation comfortably conforms to the cosmic mountain cosmology of the ancient Near East. Christians by and large assume that Eden was a garden proper, situated somewhere in the Middle East. That is to say, it had a precise terrestrial address. However, this most basic of assumptions may not be entirely true, nor entirely false. So yes, I have made the assumption sometimes that the Garden of Eden may be at the North Pole. one of the things that got me into looking into the possibility of whether or not the Garden of Eden could have possibly been at the North Pole is this map. And this, is this just a sentence? Yeah, this sentence from Birthright, the book that I was just reading. And it says, Eden is described as the fountainhead of 4 rivers that flowed down through the surrounding provinces, a clear indication of its elevated position in the landscape. The high place of Eden, the fount and confluence of 4 rivers, symbolic of the 4 cardinal directions, is evocative of the cosmic mountain and axis mundi. It is from Eden that the life-giving force of the Creator flows down from atop the axis of creation to water the earth. The terrestrial address provided by the writer of Genesis designates the location of the, this is Timothy Alberino's words, Stargate, we'll say portal, through which Eden is accessed on the cosmic mountain. Much like the gate at the beginning of a long driveway leading to a sprawling mansion, the gate, rather than the mansion itself, supplies the address point. The Mesopotamians had preserved the memory of man's primordial access to paradise and communion with the gods on the summit of Mount Hermon. The Garden of Eden is more than a lovely place. It represents the privilege of Adam's original estate and the status of sonship in the divine family, to which we are restored in Christ, who reconciles us to the Father. Now, yeah, so it does sound like Timothy Alberino thinks that the Garden of Eden may have been on Mount Hermon, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. But what it does bring to mind is what the email said about where Jesus would be reigning during the millennial kingdom from the North Pole. And I have said very often that when the new earth is here, it would be like the Garden of Eden all over again, the way that God originally intended it to be. God didn't intend the world to be like this. He intended for us to be walking with him just as Adam and Eve did. And so it would be a restoration. The new earth would be a restoration of what was supposed to be. So yes, it makes total sense that Jesus might have reigned from there or be reigning from there, depending on where we are in the timeline. Now, the one thing that I might disagree with a little bit. Now, if someone in the comments might persuade me otherwise, but the New Jerusalem, I believe, at least according to Revelation, I believe 21, does not come until after the white throne judgment. So if we are either still in the millennial kingdom, or if we are in the short season, then the New Jerusalem would not be there yet. But it's certainly, again, I did say that I thought that the North Pole would be the perfect place for the New Jerusalem to come down. If you're thinking of it physically, I do have to add at this point that I watched a video from Berean Bible Church, and they have a different way of explaining the New Jerusalem, which is equally fascinating, and I think it's an equal possibility. And I'll explain that in a future video. That's not for today's video, though. And yes, I absolutely agree. The public education system is certainly being used to further the satanic agenda. Whether, again, and I'll get to this in a little bit, whether we are in the millennial kingdom, if you are looking at this from an amillennial point of view, which don't start commenting now, wait until I talk about that later. Or if we are in the short season, it is certainly being used to further the satanic agenda. You know, celebrities are being used to further this satanic agenda. We have World's Fairs. That was all about re-education. Why? Well, I think that they were certainly trying to hide something, whether that could have been, I think I'm almost positive that it has something to do with the fact that Jesus was already reigning. And They didn't want people to know that, because what is one of the biggest things that atheists will come at Christians with nowadays? They'll say, oh, well, your Bible says that Jesus said he was coming soon, and we're 2,000 years later. So where is he? And that's something that they really love to say. Well, what if he did already come? And what if he already ushered in his kingdom? And that's what they're trying to hide from us through all of these fires, through these wars, through the things that they're teaching in the education system, through the re-education, the asylums, just as the author Spencer of the email talked about. So yes, I really thank you very much for sending this. You certainly gave me a lot to think about. Now I'm going to pull up the comment that I wanted to share with you. And this is from Garrett 621. And if I'm not mistaken, I think that when he says I'm still stuck, I'm saying he. I'm not sure though if it's a he, but that's what I'm going to say. When he says I'm still stuck between the two, I think it was on a video where I was talking about preterism. So I think he was talking about between preterism and the full preterism and the short season. But let's just read what this comment says. I'm still stuck between the two, but I'm very certain our history post-Messiah walking the earth has been dramatically rewritten. Amen. Yes, absolutely agree with that. And yes, I'm actually still stuck between preterism and the short season, because I see so much merit in both theories, and yet they also each have some holes. And it's frustrating for me because as soon as I think that I have something figured out, I see something in the Bible that doesn't fit, and I'm like, oh, come on. But I know, the Lord, he doesn't, if he made it enigmatic for a reason, and I've said this before. It has brought me to be in his word more than ever in trying to figure these things out. And I know, in humility, I know that I am never going to figure this out. But it is certainly giving me something productive to do. But anyway, if we're not in the short season, then it's likely that our world had some tremendous renaissances that were periodically crushed by our overlords, hence the Tartarian remains and star forts around the world. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. So I certainly believe that there are one of two options right now. We are either in the short season right now, or I believe it's very possible that we could be looking at this through an amillennialist point of view. And I know that some of you are going to say, oh, well, Satan was bound. Well, there is a point of view that what it means by Satan being bound is he was bound in that Christ's crucifixions, his blood covered the sin of those who accepted the gift of salvation. So this is just one theory that I've read, and I'm just going to go over some of the things that I've been thinking about, because like I said, I go back and forth all the time. So first, let's talk about the difference between amillennialism and postmillennialism, because I think that it's a possibility that postmillennialism could also be in play. That's what I was talking to Donita, and I'm at the point where I'm like, I think that each eschatological view has some merit, and we will find the truth probably in pulling from all of them. And I don't think that any one of them is going to be 100% correct. And I really stand by that. I don't think that any of them is going to be 100% infallible. So amillennialism versus postmillennialism, meaning and differences. And let's just go down here because it gives you the definitions. So define amillennialism. Amillennialism derived from the Latin prefix a or a, meaning no or non, and millennium, referring to the 1,000-year reign of Christ mentioned in the book of Revelation, is a theological belief that rejects the notion of a literal earthly millennial kingdom. According to amillennialism, the millennium described in Revelation 20:1-6 is not a literal period of 1,000 years, but rather a symbolic representation of the present church age. This perspective asserts that the binding of Satan described in the same passage signifies the victory of Christ over the powers of evil through his death and resurrection. See, that's what I was trying to say, but this just said it much more eloquently than I did. Amillennialists emphasize the spiritual nature of Christ's kingdom, asserting that it is currently being realized in the hearts and lives of believers. They argue that the prophecies concerning the restoration of Israel have been fulfilled in the person and work of Jesus Christ, and that the church now serves as the true Israel, inheriting the promises of God. And that is one thing. I know that since most Christians nowadays have been brought up on futurism, and futurism is very, very literal. And so people who adhere to futurist eschatology, they look at everything, well, not everything, but they have a very large emphasis on this physical realm. But I think it's very, very important to realize that the spiritual realm also exists and in many ways is far more real than what this physical world will ever be. And I think it's something that needs to be considered when you think that everything has to be physical. Define postmillennialism. Postmillennialism, as the name suggests, posits that the second coming of Christ will occur after the millennium. This eschatological view holds that the world will progressively improve through the influence of the gospel, leading to a golden age of peace, righteousness, and prosperity. Postmillennialists interpret the 1,000-year reign mentioned in Revelation 20, 1-6, as a metaphorical period representing a long era of spiritual triumph and societal transformation. They believe that the gospel will gradually permeate all aspects of human society, resulting in the conversion of the majority of people and the establishment of a global Christian civilization. Unlike amillennialism, postmillennialism anticipates a literal, visible return of Christ following this period of unprecedented human progress. This return is believed to coincide with the final judgment and the resurrection of both the righteous and the wicked. Postmillennialists draw inspiration from biblical passages such as Isaiah 2, 2-4, which envisions all nations streaming to the mountain of the Lord, and Psalm 72, which portrays the reign of a righteous king bringing peace and justice to the earth. It is important to note that while amillennialism and postmillennialism share some similarities, they diverge in their understanding of the timing and nature of Christ's return and the establishment of his kingdom on earth. So I'm sure that I'm going to have to be referring back to those definitions at some other point in this video, because to me, amillennialism and postmillennialism, they are very similar. So sometimes I have to keep checking back and forth between the two to see what exactly the difference is. But let's actually talk about the short season right now, because I've been talking a lot about preterism because I find it extremely fascinating and it's something that I want to learn more about. And I know that full preterists believe that the white throne judgment that has already happened, and we are already on the new heavens, and we are already on the new earth, sorry, and there's already new heavens, and that some full preterists believe that we believers are the new Jerusalem. So they tend to use the fact that Revelation says these things must happen quickly. And that's what's in, I believe, Revelation 1:1. And then at the end of Revelation, in Revelation 22, it says, seal not the words of this prophecy, for these things must happen quickly. So what I was thinking about, though, because that to me sounds like a slam dunk, like, yeah, this whole book it needs to happen quickly. It's going to happen soon. But the fact that it does say for 1,000 years, to me, that does make it sound like, okay, everything must happen quickly, but I'm going to give you, a further out prophecy, because first there's going to be 1,000-year period. So I do think that that is a possibility as well. I go back and forth because, again, I see merit between both of them, but anybody can see that we are living in a time period right now with unprecedented destruction. and evil, uh, damage. We're destroying libraries, we're destroying census records, you know, entire cities burning to the ground, oh, and well, that's beautiful. So that's not destruction. But then at the same time, we have all of these beautiful buildings that seem to have no no explanation for, if you look at what other photos show of what was able to be built in the time period that these things were said to be built, you'll see like shacks, wooden shacks. That's what you'll see. But then you'll see wooden shacks next to these beautiful buildings. And so you do have to wonder, who built these? How were they able to do such things? And what are we missing here? And one of the biggest problems that I have with full preterism is that they believe that Satan has already been destroyed in the lake of fire, and that would include all of his angels as well, all of the demons, everyone. And to me, I think there's no denying that Satan is still out there. And we can see this in celebrities with their satanic hand signs. We can see it in what people might call UFO abductions. Uh, we can see it in hauntings, the paranormal. And I know that a lot of what people call hauntings and the paranormal can have normal explanations, but not all of them can. So even if 99% of them can be explained away, but there's 1% left that you have no explanation for, well, then you still need to come up with a different answer, don't you? So that is my biggest problem, is that we do see all of these things going on. And the short season would certainly be a time that things like this are ramping up. Now, moving on though, I can also see the possibility of the amillennialist perspective, in that it was just a symbolic time mentioned in Revelation. And I'm going to give an example for that, because the term in Old Testament, 1,000 generations, is used, I believe Donita said 11 times. And it's funny because she wasn't telling me this for the reason that I'm using it now. But I find it interesting that the term 1,000 generations was used 11 times in the Old Testament, and it was hyperbole. So I think that's a very good example of, yes, a lot of people say, oh, well, 1,000 isn't used. Yeah, and I understand that that's Old Testament and this is New Testament, but it's still examples of hyperbole. So we need to keep that in mind, and not fight with each other about this. This is not something for us to fight about. This is not a salvation issue. So, with that being said, amillennialists do believe that Christ is on the throne right now. And so you might think, well, that doesn't seem to make any sense, because if Christ is on the throne, why are all of these really bad things happening in the world right now? Well, one interesting thing that I found in the book On Time by John Paul Miles, I'm going to try to find it right now, is that what we call the 1,000 years, okay, it was considered to be the sixth millennia, okay? And it says that they called these the sixth millennia, they called them the days of the Messiah. And it says they expected them to be a transition period between the former ages and the eternal age to come. And it says here, many rabbis believed that the period of the Messiah was to be only a transitory stage between this world and the world to come, and opinions differed on its duration. How long will the days of the Messiah last? And so I'm not really talking right now about how long they're going to last, but I am going to talk about how it is possible that we still have so much deception going on, so much destruction, so much anguish going on, so much turmoil. Well, another thing, again, is that they believed that this was to be the days of the Messiah, would be a time of great anguish. And it says here, B.F. Westcott, 1889, Jewish teachers distinguished a present age, this age, from that age, the age to come. Between the present age of imperfection and conflict and trial and the age to come of the perfect reign of God, they placed the days of the Messiah, which they sometimes reckoned in the former, sometimes in the latter, and sometimes distinct from both. They were, however, commonly agreed that the passage from one age to the other would be through a period of intense sorrow and anguish, the travail pains of the new birth. So they believed that the days of the Messiah would be a time of anguish and great pain. And if you think about it, if Jesus is, placing his enemies under his feet, they're going to fight. They're going to give everything that they can, everything against him that they can. So while a lot of times we're given this picture of this time period as being perfect peace and prosperity, well, you know what? Eventually it may come to that, but they're certainly they're fighting back, because it says that Satan was bound. It doesn't necessarily say that all of his demons were bound or all of his angels were bound. So I think that it would make sense that we would expect some pushback during that time period. Now, if you're going to then move on into, and again, I'm just going to kind of wrap things up with the amillennial perspective, is that so it is very possible that these terrible things could still be happening if it's still in that transitory phase, when Christ is still getting his enemies under his feet at this point in time. Now, post-millennialism believes that the world is just going to just keep getting better and better and better. And after we reach the point where there's just believers everywhere and Christianity is reigns supreme, so to speak. That's when Jesus will return for the white throne judgment. Well, we can surely bet that Satan and his minions, they don't want the white throne judgment to happen, because they know exactly what's going to happen to them. They've known that for thousands of years, what was going to happen to them. So, wouldn't it make sense that these controllers, these people from the royal bloodlines, these Nephilim descendants, or in fact the demonic entities themselves, may cause some of the resets that we're experiencing? They want people to keep getting pulled back again. They want all of the history to be hidden. They want to just give as much trouble as they can, because they want to, I can't think of how I want to put this. They want to extend their time here on earth without being thrown into the lake of fire. They know what's coming. They're trying to delay it. That's the word I'm looking for. They want to delay what's going to happen. And could that be why there are these resets that we see happening? We see prosperity, and then something happens, some cataclysm. And interestingly, I have been watching with my children Patterns of Evidence, Exodus. We've been watching it for their homeschool, for their Bible. And they had a timeline wall up, and this is about Egypt. But one thing that really got my interest was that it tells us here that each kingdom in Egypt had a dark period after it. So there was the old kingdom, a time of prosperity and success, and then there was a dark period. And then the middle kingdom came and it rose again, and there was prosperity and success. And then there was a dark period. And then the new kingdom came and there was a prosperity and success. And then there was a dark period. And what is it that I always say about what it says in Ecclesiastes? Ecclesiastes 1 verses 8 through 10 says, "All things are wearisome, more than one can describe. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear content with hearing. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there a case where one can say, look, this is new? It has already existed in the ages before us. History is cyclical, and the resets, I believe, are just a part of that. Another very interesting thing to think about is what is called the four turnings. And I'm just going to read a little bit about this to you if you haven't heard about this. What are the four cycles of history? Based on recent American history, does the four turning theory hold water? And so this is based on a book called The Fourth Turning by William Strauss and Neil Howe. In The Fourth Turning, William Strauss and Neil Howe explain that human history is characterized by a cyclical progression through four turnings. The first turning is a high, the second turning is an awakening, the third turning is an unraveling, and the fourth turning is a crisis. And so, from what I understand, they believe that we are now coming to the end of a fourth turning when we are in a crisis. And if that is true, and if this is true, I'm certainly looking forward to a high after everything that we've been going through. But let's just continue reading all of this. The cycle of the four turnings. Like a single phase of a human life, a turning lasts around 15 to 25 years. A single cycle of history is called a seculum. Turnings aren't characterized by the events that occur during them, but rather by society's reactions to those events. The seculum theory is based on a cyclical view of time, the idea that the same themes and types of events recur and will continue to recur throughout history, as opposed to the chaotic theory, which views times as a series of random and unrelated events, or the linear theory, which views time as a non-recurring progression with a definite start and end. Actually, this just really brought it into perspective for me, because our God is a God of order. So it would make sense that it would be cyclical. Let's see. We'll go down here. The actions of a society can't stop the cycle, but we can prepare for each turning by studying previous cycles of history and the effects they had on society. We can then ease transitions by shifting our activities based on the turning we're currently in and anticipating the next one. On an individual scale, this means preparing in advance for the financial and cultural challenges the next turning might pose. Think of Joseph gathering up all of the wheat, knowing that the famine was coming. On a societal scale, this means governments should anticipate the shifts in public sentiment and alter their programs and agendas to suit them. So the first turning is a high. According to the authors, a high occurs after a period of great turmoil is resolved. During a high, a new social order is put in place. Government is strong and active, and public services are expanded. Values like individualism fall out of fashion. I don't think that's a good thing, and are replaced by more collective values. I don't think that's a good thing either. But anyway, income inequality and unemployment fall, and productivity increases. Class inequality also falls, but gender gaps increase. Children are given greater autonomy. America's most recent first turning. The first turning of our current seculum lasted from 1946 to 1964, explain the authors. So I'm just going to go down here. During this turning, the elder lost generation was leading with the wisdom built by living through 2 world wars and the Great Depression. The hero GIs in midlife built their nation to its greatest point in history so far. The young adult silent generation married early and avoided risk. During the American high, trust in government and institutions was high. Income inequality dropped and the middle class flourished. Families grew, leading to the mass building of suburbs. Racism and sexism brewed, materialism was rampant, and nonconformity was stigmatized. The second turning, an awakening. An awakening occurs when people pull away from the societal order imposed during the high, resulting in a cultural revolution. People question and defy the institutions and regulations established during the high as the need for them falls out of living memory. People also reject collective values and the ideals of duty and conformity in favor of individual rights. Government weakens and free markets begin to overshadow public services. Violence and crime increase, as do income inequality and class divisions. Gender divisions become less strict, and child rearing becomes more lenient. And it says that the most recent second turning was sparked by the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So that's interesting. And, well, it looks like we cannot read the rest of it because you have to, I guess, get maybe a subscription to this. But I'll still leave a link for this in the description. But let's try to find something that tells us about the third and fourth turnings. Okay, so I see this one. This one uses rebirth instead of high, but it's basically all the same thing, just different words. So there is a crisis, which involves a reset and a reliance. Isn't it interesting that the WEF keeps talking about their reset, which is a completely different reset than what I talk about when I talk about resets. I have to point that out. A financial reset like that is not the same thing as a complete civilization reset. Yeah, they're different. Anyway, so then we have the rebirth, or what the other one calls a high, and it's a rebirth and a budding, awakening, and abundance, and then unraveling, complacency and gluttony. So these cycles, like, they last for, I believe it said 80 years, and it's about 15 to 25 years for each of these cycles. And if you go back through history, you will be able to identify these cycles according to this theory in each of the different points of history. And I do think that it's very interesting, especially with, all the talk that I do about cyclical history. But I think I covered everything that I wanted to. So we'll just go back to this pretty picture. And that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. And if you like my work, you can check out my YouTube membership. I will leave a link in the description box for that, or you can just click on it on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.